What you have seen is focused on Dr. Land, and especially the laboratory in which he created so many brilliant new things. Our speaker this morning is someone who knew the lab and worked very closely with Dr. Land, and that's Dr. Shelley Buckler. Dr. Buckler is an accomplished scientist, a technical and business leader of the highest order, both at Polaroid and a number of other enterprises. Let me just summarize his Polaroid service. He was an employee for 30 years and an officer for 25 of those. He served as Vice President of Research. He started the battery and chemical operation units. He was the general manager of the industrial business. He initiated the business venture with the Soviet Union and China. But the main reason we wanted him to speak is he's a very funny man. Shelly.
Okay, well, I guess I have to tell some jokes based on that. First of all, I think we all owe Eric and the board a great big shout out and thank you for organizing the project, getting that design. The plaque celebrates Dr. Land's creative work, 500 plus patents, numerous scientific achievements in addition. He also was a very patriotic person. He spent a lot of time working for the government, initiated some things that were used. He was close with both Eisenhower and Kennedy. And many, we could spend the whole meeting talking about his fierce patriotic devotion to this country. He also was an innovator in the sense that I think he was the first, the prototype of somebody who left school and was interested in technology, left early to found a company which became very successful. Now we all know there are a number of other prototypes since then. And some other companies have emerged. Among the best known are Apple, that followed that same pathway, Microsoft, most recently Facebook, and the like. So it's a prototype of creating innovation in the United States, which really, as far as I know, has no parallel elsewhere on the face of the globe. It's something that Land started, among other things. He's a remarkable guy. But basically, we've talked about that a lot. We've celebrated that a lot. But, Edwin Land, and I had the privilege of in about 15 of the 30 years I spent at Polaroid, I worked closely with him. And what I discovered was he didn't spend all of his time on top of Mount Olympus. No, and at other times, he was, shall we say, a human being just like the rest of us. So I'm going to tell you some stories about my experience with Land, the human side of Edwin Land, the human side of the life that he had, and I'm going to share those with you. I might say a few of them are things that I've never shared before, but I think at this point you wouldn't mind. You've been gone a long time, and I think it's okay. So. Let me start, when I first started working with him, maybe the second or third evening that we were working together on a problem, he stopped suddenly, and he said, I want you to know what I do, and why I do it. And he described his life as a little boy in Norwich, Connecticut. His mother insisted that he wear these sailor suits, he'd always be neatly dressed when he went out to play. So the kids naturally picked on him and bullied him because, they were wearing ordinary clothes and here he was all dressed up, So pretty soon, he says, I became somewhat reclusive and I used to concentrate on doing projects down in the basement and all the rest. And then he said that I had an experience. Every Sunday afternoon, my family had this big touring car. And we used to drive and see one of the relatives. He said, I loathed doing that. They used to, you know, it wasn't anything for me to do. They used to pinch my cheek. They used to say things to me that I didn't want to hear and all the rest of it. Well, he said to me, looking me right in the eye, there was this one Sunday afternoon, I was in the back seat. I think I was about 9 years old, and I said to myself, and this is Lance speaking, I will never, ever let anybody tell me what to do again for the rest of my life. Well, you know, I stood there and I'm thinking to myself, why is he telling me this? but you know what? No one ever did. From the time he was 9 years old, no one ever did. And he had some reason for telling me that. I don't know what it was, but, you know, when you're alone with him, he can open up and tell you things of an intimate and personal nature that were really staggering. And, you know, it was from that kind of thing that, frankly, I grew to love the man, and I still feel my love for him. And, of course, I had some involvement with some of his other family situations. One time we were working in the late afternoon, he looks at the watch and says, oh, my God. I says, we have to go. He says, you come with me, come with me. We was driving at that point, a big station wagon. And we keep talking, he drives out to Logan Airport. It turns out the reason for it was his wife, Terry, was coming back from her winter sojourn in Carmel, California. She had a bad case of arthritis, so she used to spend the winter out there. And he was supposed to pick her up, and he was late. And her arthritis was so bad, when she got off the airplane, they put her in a wheelchair. She had a traveling companion, and they were standing out in front of American Airlines, and she was not happy. She was not pleased. And so I helped Dr. Land, along with SkyCap, get her in the car, along with her traveling companion. I got back in, the passenger side, and she started. And she said, you're late. You're always late. You've always been late. You missed everything. There are things you Jennifer's Sweet 16, you didn't show up for that. And on she went. And meanwhile, he's hunched over the steering wheel and he's driving. And you married guys out there, you know what that's like. You've been there. Well, I tell you, the drive must have been 20 minutes. She didn't stop. She recounted everything, like she had it all hung up in the closet, and she took them down one after the other. And she recounted these things, and he didn't say anything. We got to their house on Bradley Street, and helped her out, got her in, and he took her upstairs. And so she was still talking, still going on. And then he said, okay, now, he said, we can go back to the lab. We got in the car and drove back. And I had a couple of other incidents I think I can share with you. I think there are a few things that may be better left unsaid, but one time he told me to come for breakfast. He wanted something to talk about. It was about 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. And his voice was coming from upstairs. The housekeeper let me in. And she's saying to him, Terry is saying to him, you can't wear that tie with this suit. You know, that's terrible. I won't let you leave this house with that tie. And he's saying, I love this tie, I want to wear this tie. And that went on for a while, and then there was a great silence. And then I hear his voice say, okay, you're satisfied now? Obviously he put on, and she said, that's exactly the right tie for you. Then he came downstairs, and we had a cup of coffee before he left. And the devil in me wanted to say, oh my, isn't that a beautiful tie? But discretion was the better part of valor. I didn't make that comment, although I was just on the verge of doing it, you know. I mean, you didn't really want to push him too far because he could really get angry. Another time he had me over in the morning, and he had gotten these 2 bull mastiff dogs, puppies. And they were about 7, 8 months old, maybe 9 months old. And they're big, big dogs. And they have boundless energy, particularly, these are kind of like puppies at that age. And so he was having such a problem with them that he sent them off to, what shall we say, boarding school in Connecticut for a couple of months to get trained. And he had just gotten them back, and he was very proud of that. So he said, I want to show you the training that these dogs have. So he had this great big kitchen. So he has the dogs at one end of the kitchen, and we're at the other end of the kitchen. And I said, I'm going to show you, when I say stay, you know, they want to come to me, want to come. When I say stay, they're going to stay. Okay, fine, you know, I'm an observer. So the dogs say, stay, you know. And they're wiggling around, he's very proud of them. But one thing they didn't teach them at this boarding school for dogs was, when one of the two dogs got so excited that he proceeded to let loose a mass of diarrhea. He was so excited, boom, you know, and Lance stood there, but they stayed, they didn't come. and Lance said, let's go in the dining room. So he closed the door behind him, went in there, had a cup of coffee, and worked. And somebody else had to, you know, do the job in the kitchen, you know, that's the way things are. Well, and another side, the personal side was, there was a group among the officers, you know, if I could use the analogy, it was, and I hope Dr. Lamb will forgive me for this, it was like Frank Sinatra and his buddies, you know, I mean, they were like a group, and they hung out together, they did stuff together, they went to dinner, they played poker at night, you know, shall we say, guy stuff, that sort of thing. They drank cocktails together, whatever. The group consisted of Bill McCune, of course, Otto Wolf, Charlie McCulka, and Elkin Blau. Now, Elkin left Polaroid in the 1950s, but he stayed close with this group and close with Land, and he was actually one of my predecessors as director of chemical research, and he went on to professorship at Harvard. He'd come back a lot, and he and Land continued to have a close relationship. And Dr. Land used to every now and then buy a car. But one thing he didn't do is he never sold a car. So he had a barn behind his house on Broad Street, and in that car were all the cars that he ever owned, you know. And every once in a while he had another one. And he'd drive them from time to time, but you know, that just was his, you know, one of his indulgences. Elkin Blau had developed a passion for Land's Buick convertible. He really wanted that convertible for some reason or other. I offered to buy it from Land refused. One morning I'm in Land's office, we're talking about something, and he says, excuse me for a moment. He gets his assistant to get Elkin Blau on the phone. He says, Elkin? He says, do you still want that Buick convertible? And I hear a loud voice in the back, and then, yes. He says, okay. He said, bring a check, and he named the amount of X thousand dollars, you know. He said, bring a check over here, and I'll give you the key, and the car's yours. Well, within 20 minutes, Elkin comes running in the door, you know, and he's got the check, and he gives Land the check, Land gives him the keys, and Elkin says, well, where's the car? And Land says, it's in Central Square where it broke down this morning. Those were the kinds of things they sort of did with each other. And I'd like to tell you another little tale about Dr. Land was he had the quickest mind on the planet. And he could come up with phrases and answers to things, you know, in a flash. So, you know, just to set the stage a little bit, Kodak has introduced their SX70 type camera. One of our people went to New York to the presentation, brought back a camera and some film, and a bunch of us are sitting in the boardroom on the third floor, 549 Tech Square, at and Dr. Land is part of the group. And the guy who brought it back demonstrates the camera. Now, just to, again, set the stage a little bit, they used a 4 AA alkaline pack battery in the camera, not in the film pack. So it was reusable for packet to back. But because it had a lot of capacity, but because it was 4 batteries, it had a high impedance. So it could only deliver the current at a relatively low rate compared to our flat pack battery, you know, which had much more surface area and was much more zippy. So in any event, he observes how the Kodak camera delivers the film. Comes out, okay. And then, you know, by contrast, we're taking some pictures of our camera, you know. And so the marketing guy says to Land, he says, what do you think is the principal difference between their system and our system? He looked at it and he said, well, he says, it's pretty obvious. He says, theirs evacuates and ours ejaculates. I don't know anybody else. I don't know anybody else who could come up with a, you know, with an answer like that. But that was sort of a typical of this wonderful man. And then, of course, let's say one story about a working relationship, which almost did me in. You remember the whole, those of you who were there at the time, the whole advance of the SX70 project on every front you can think of, you know, the negative front, the camera front, the film assembly front, the coating of the positive sheet, et cetera, et cetera. We had, in the chemical group, we succeeded in making the chemicals necessary for the negative and for the reagent, except we didn't have a functional opacifier. Now, I could spend a lot of time telling you how hard it was to do this opacifier thing, the way Land designed the system. You know, this film, this pictures were taken and called impossible. This was really impossible. We had no clue as to how to put something in the reagent that would completely protect the film and then disappear and be stored for a year in that hostile environment. No clue. We had help. We had count them, two Nobel Prize winners in organic chemistry as consultants. We had Bob Woodward from Harvard and Derek Barton from Great Britain. And they reviewed it with us and the 150 ideas we had, and they just shook their head, we don't see any way to get this done, to do it. Meanwhile, I was, as the head of the chemistry group, at that point rapidly becoming the biggest skunk at the picnic imaginable. Everyone was investing their time and energy, and this product wasn't going to go to market until we had a pacifier. So it was tough. It was very, very tough. Okay, and then so some of the, the camera big shots and the negative big shots and all the other big shots are all, pointing their finger at me. They agree on one thing, they agree on that. And there was a confrontation in Land's office about we have to redesign the system, we're never going to have a pacifier and so forth. And Land said, we are going to have a pacifier. This chemical group is going to solve the problem. And he threw his arm around. And he continued to do that. He was the only person that wasn't worried. Something magic happened. We didn't believe we could do it. We were certain we couldn't. But he, the greatest genius on the planet, believed we could do it. And somehow that infiltrated us. And we found a way to do it. There's no way in heaven or earth that we would have succeeded in that task if it weren't for his confidence that he had in us. And he really laid it on the line because the company had invested hundreds of millions of dollars and so forth. And the solution we came up with was not the most complex one in the world. It was a little complex and all that. And he said to me then, another one of his great phrases, he said, there's no such thing as genius. He says, and he points out to the pacifier, and he said, all there is the cessation of stupidity. You know? So, okay, I'll take that. I really will. And then as a reward, the batteries are all linking in an RAVAC program, and then he signed me that program. To struggle with for a while, and all the rest of it. So, you know, those were great days and the like. And Eric, I have one more story to tell if I have enough time. Do I have it?
Sure.
Okay. This is, I'm going to repeat a story now that someone else told. I'm going to repeat it because it's the greatest story ever told at Polaroid. Now, and just to set the stage for it, we had a wonderful, sweet guy in personnel, as it was called back in those days, in the 1960s, 1970s, a fellow named Phil McDonald. Now, how many people here remember Phil McDonald? I see a few hands going up. Yeah, he's a wonderful man. One of Phil's characteristics was he stuttered. And some days it was really bad. It was hard for him to get anything out. But we loved the guy, and there wasn't anything he wouldn't do for you if he could do it. He was that sweet a person. So anyway, Phil is returned, right? And as you know, there's a great deal of stories about where did the idea from instant photography come from. You know, and you hear various versions of it. Even Land had a version of it, which you know, I can tell you is not the authentic goods. Nobody really knows. I mean, well, many of us have a suspicion, including me, but put that aside. And he, you know, he lived his life as an inventor and all the rest of it, and they had this grand house in Cambridge. And Phil is retiring. And some people got up and they made tributes to Phil. Heartfelt tributes, because he was that sweet a guy. And then it was Phil's turn to get up and answer. And Phil got up to speak. And an amazing thing happened. He didn't stutter. He gave his speech without stuttering even once. And Phil said, and I'm now repeating his words, he said, "You all know me here for a long time. I've been here in personnel. You know I try to be helpful. But basically my job is to do relatively simple and routine things, you know, checking people out, making sure their benefits are right, making sure they get paid right, and if they have problems to help them solve and all the rest of it. So, you know, you all love good old Phil. But up to now, you don't know one thing about Phil McDonald that I'm going to disclose to you this afternoon. And this was taking place in a big room at 750 Main Street. There were about 200 people in the room. And he said, I made a contribution, a singular contribution to this company that is the most powerful one that's ever been made. It's resulted in an opportunity for you to have jobs and for this company to grow and all that goes with it. So we're all sitting there, because he was speaking in a very serious way, you know. Ooh, couldn't imagine what comes after. He said, many years ago, this was actually, he said, in April of 1945, I was out on a Sunday afternoon in Cambridge. It was warm. I was walking down Broad Street. I was having a stroll. I noticed up ahead that a man, obviously a father, was taking pictures of his daughter, you know, right close to the street where their stone wall was. And as I approached him, he looked at the camera, obviously out of film, went back in the house, obviously to get another roll of film. And he said, and then so I approached this little girl who was right near the street, and I said to her, little girl, ask your father why you can't see the pictures right away. Well, I tell you, Phil told this a hell of a lot better than I did. and it just simply brought down the house. And you know, it's for me, it's the greatest Polaroid story ever told. I really love it. I love that, you know, that style, and remember Phil with great fondness. So, with that, I'm going to pull down the curtain on some storytelling, because we have a video coming in which many of you are going to be telling your stories as well. But I'd like to conclude by saying that with all the great inventions that man made, the one that really brings us together here is his invention of the character, the personality, and the environment that existed in his company. Hard to put your fingers on it, but it brought us together. It was a company that we thought and believed that cared about us, that you know, rewarded us for our contributions, gave us an opportunity to grow, believed in the meaningful working life, gave us the job posting system a chance to move ahead if we cared to, and all the rest. And it also provided an environment in which long-lasting friendships could be formed, and great memories that we carried, that each of us here have. And I'd like to thank him for that, and I'd like to thank you all for your attention. Thank you very much.